Hey folks, we're really excited to share this week's episode featuring the incredible Karriem Riggins. But first, friend of the show Jose Medeles called to tell us about his new book, The Stoic Drummer.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I appreciate it. I would say around 3 years ago. Man, it's been incredible because I feel it's like a compass for me. It's like a daily compass. And because it's a practical philosophy, I can, always kind of have it there when a situation arises or when I want to just try to figure something out. So, yeah, I definitely practice it every day. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It just kind of hit me that I think I should share this because it was having such a great effect on me. So I said, you know what? I think I have to do this. It kind of felt the same way as drumming happened to me. It felt the same way with Revival. Like, I have to open up this drum shop. Same with 39 Ensemble. It was something that I had to do. So I made it happen. Well, I just hope it becomes a companion for them to, just remember, kind of why and maybe goals to work towards. And I just love that it exists out there because there wasn't really a book like this, or I would have bought it and I would have worked on it. And I just love that there's a book for us that, that taps into, the core and the well-being of the drummer. That's definitely I think the tip of the spear is to, nourish and inspire. It is, so they can order it if they're into it. Yeah, I'm really excited that it's been, it's been shipped to England and Netherlands and Australia and Germany. It's the reaction has been amazing, so that's exciting. Yes, actually it has. That was the second one. That's hilarious that you would bring that up. It was, that was, it's all really fun. You're totally right. Thank you, Joe, for all you do. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And, yeah, man, happy to be here.
This is Joe Wong. Welcome to The Trap Set, where each week we explore the lives of drummers. I want to play something for you. You're hearing Lester Leaps In by Ray Brown, featuring my guest, Karriem Riggins, on drums. Born in Detroit, Karriem grew up in a musical family. His father was keyboardist Emmanuel Riggins. Karriem is the rare artist whose strong creative voice resonates in the worlds of improvised music and hip-hop alike. He's worked with established legends such as Betty Carter, Ray Brown, Hank Jones, and Paul McCartney, as well as modern legends such as J Dilla, Common, and Erykah Badu. Whether he's sitting behind an acoustic drum kit or an MPC, Karriem brings a fiercely innovative spirit to every project. He recently released his second album as a leader, Head Nod Suite, on Stone's Throw Records. I spoke to him in front of a live audience at the Ace Hotel and Swim Club in Palm Springs, California. And now, my conversation with Karriem Riggins.
Thank you.
Karriem, what's your earliest memory?
Wow. Earliest memory was just being intrigued by the drums. At the age of 2, my dad's a jazz musician, played organ and piano with Grant Green for a lot of years. So just being around the house, like I would see them playing and I gravitated to the drums. So that was the earliest memory, hearing the rhythms and seeing cats nodding their heads and stuff like that.
Can you remember the first time you actually got to play?
Definitely. When they would take a break, I would always pick the sticks up and slap on them. They're like, get off of those drums.
When did they start encouraging it?
Well, my mom didn't encourage it as much as my dad because, the rat-a-tat-tat and all in her ear all the time. I would say 5th grade, I was in band, and that was because I played trumpet as well. Trumpet was my first instrument in school, and then I moved to the drums in school.
Is there something about the drums that kind of resonated with you personally more than the trumpet or more than any other instrument that you felt like you could connect to the world in that way?
Definitely. It's like the ability to have control and to be in the driver's seat of the band. That's like, as everyone says, the heartbeat and the focal point of the group,
So, growing up with a father who was a musician, did you want to be a professional musician when you came of age?
Definitely. Even before I came of age, I knew that this is what I wanted to pursue. As far back as I can remember, this was what I wanted to do.
And it seemed like there was an example there. So, lots of people that I've spoken with didn't have a parent who was a musician, and it seemed like almost like impossible. But to you, did it just seem like a natural choice?
Definitely. It was just, I got to see the true work ethic and how to practice and how to achieve a sound on your instrument from practicing.
Are you the kind of person that plans your life? Like, did you set goals for yourself?
Not really. I think more so just like achieving like certain goals as far as playing. And I knew because all of my friends that I grew up with moved to New York. So I knew that I wanted to move. That was like a goal of mine to move to New York. And they were older than me, so once I graduated, I was there.
Why was that a goal? I mean, what did it represent?
It represented greatness because all of my favorite musicians, a lot of the cats that would come to Detroit when I was in middle school and high school, they were all living in New York. That was like that's the mecca of jazz or just music in general. There's so much great music there.
Were you listening to hip hop and jazz simultaneously?
Definitely.
One kind of phenomenon I've encountered in the world of jazz is that lots of the older musicians didn't respect hip hop. So how did your father respond to that?
My father encouraged it. I mean, he was definitely into a lot of the music that we were checking out. Like my first 45 that I bought was Fat Boy Stickum. And he thought it was one of the most innovative things, the fact that they were using their mouth for rhythm and putting effects and different reverbs and delays on the mics. It's very innovative.
These dirty clothes. And so I will tell you a story how I got my dirty clothes on. I remember I was around 16 years old. One day my clothes got so dirty I didn't want to wear them anymore. You see, sometimes your clothes get so dirty.
So when did you move to New York? You were 17?
Yeah, 1994, I moved to New York. And I actually went there to perform with Betty Carter, who had a program called The Jazz Ahead. And she featured a lot of different young jazz musicians from all over the United States. So there were 3 or 4 musicians from Detroit, and we flew there to do a show at the Apollo and at Brooklyn Academy of Music.
What was your state of mind at the time?
Blew my mind, because I had never been outside of Detroit other than going to see my grandmother in Chicago. So going to a big city like New York, and we were going to all these different clubs like Vigione's and Blue Note and the Village Vanguard. I just thought it was incredible to see all this music and get a chance to see my favorites.
Do you feel like you had developed or kind of been in touch with your creative voice by that point? Like, do you feel like you had an aesthetic of your own?
No, I just knew what I loved and what I loved, all the musicians that I loved that was inspiring me. I knew I wanted to be like them, but I was still searching on a quest for my sound. Yeah.
So how did that manifest? Like, what did you do to kind of find that?
Practicing and listening to as many records as I can, and as a drummer named Kenny Washington, who influenced me to study the records, like taught me how to really study a record. Kenny's like really into the melody. Like I love the drummers that could play melodies. He would be able to scat the solos and the melodies of the songs and even lyrics. There's a lot of great drummers that are great drummers, but you can tell the drummers that know the music from, studying the lyrics of the song and knowing the melodies and harmony,
So you've used the word great a lot. What's your personal definition of greatness?
I would say greatness is, I would just attach a name to it, like Elvin Jones is great. Roy Haynes is great. Philly Joe Jones. That's my definition of greatness, like mastery of an instrument, being one with it.
Did you spend any time with those guys?
Definitely. I spent time with Roy Haynes. I met him back in 1998 when I was playing with Ray Brown's trio, and he came to hear our group. And he was very, supportive of what I was doing, and he told me that I reminded him of his grandson, who was
Marcus.
young. Marcus, yeah, exactly. Marcus Gilmore.
Okay, well, you named some names as far as greatness, but like, what are the qualities that unify those 3 people?
Like I said, the mastery and being one with the instrument. You can tell that, they ate, sleep, breathe music, and the drums. Elvin Jones it was like that was his language. That was, what he lived.
When I think of those 3, I mean, they had a mastery of the instrument in the same way that somebody might have a mastery of language.
That's
but
right.
Then they also had original ideas to communicate.
That's right.
Through that language.
Yeah.
So is that something that you aspired to?
Definitely. I'm still working on it. It's a work in progress.
So what do you do to work on it?
Like practice, man. Practice is so important to me. I'm having wrist issues right now just from trying to work on a lot of different rhythms, and sometimes you can stress yourself by going in so hard. But just the independence is important. Once you have the independence, it's effortless to do a lot of different things. So I'm practicing that right now.
How would you describe the feeling that you get when you're playing and everything is locking into place?
Wow, that is the best feeling. I mean, that I feel like, I get spiritual because I feel like God lives in the music, and I feel like that is God. When everything is going the way it should be going, that's when God is speaking through you. You know what I mean?
How often do you feel that? Do you feel it every time you play?
Definitely. I feel blessed to be able to do this, and I feel I'm honored to be able to be, to channel that through the music. You know what I mean?
Surround us with a glassy top. We're going down. Has the sky gone up? Honey, don't interrupt me. And look at the clouds. Sky looks like we're going down. Honey, don't make me turn this thing around. Is the sky
This episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by Polyvinyl Records, home of the band Always, whose latest album, Anti-Socialites, was released last fall to accolades from the likes of NPR, Pitchfork, Rolling Stone, and Spin. Check out Anti-Socialites now on Apple Music, as well as new videos for Dreams Tonight and In Undertow. All right, so let's go back. You're 17, you're in New York, you're playing with Betty Carter. What's your plan?
I didn't want to go home. I stayed in New York with the money. I think I made like $2,500, and I moved to New York with that $2,500 and didn't go back to Detroit.
So how did you make it last? How did you cut it?
There's a great friend of mine named Alvester Garnett, who's a great drummer in New York. He let me sleep on his floor, and I stayed in his place for maybe 3 or 4 months. And we had a schedule. He would practice for a few hours, and I would practice for a few hours. And, just networking around town, I got a chance to meet Stephen Scott, who's a great pianist, and I started doing shows with him. Jazz singer Vanessa Rubin. Like, I made my way around the city doing local gigs that, helped me get my own place finally.
How has your pursuit of jazz informed your approach to making other types of music? Not a lot of people can do that. I mean, there aren't that many jazz drummers that can also make beats.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think that I think we're a product of what we listen to, what we ingest. It's like that's what we breathe, you know what I mean? And that is what I live. I live for hip hop. I live for jazz. And that's just something that I can't even explain. Certain things you just can't explain. But I know that there's an umbrella. Everything is under the jazz umbrella. So
right.
A lot of the syncopation and things that I've learned in jazz allow me to be able to do hip hop and other things.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I think of jazz as like Latin, right? And then hip hop is Spanish or whatever.
Yeah.
But some jazz musicians try to make Spanish music, but they're still singing in Latin.
Right.
But you seem to have a mastery of both, or an understanding of both.
I have an understanding, not a mastery.
What does it mean to be a master?
To be a master, man, I feel like I played with a lot of those great musicians like Ray Brown, who...
Would he have considered himself a master?
He felt like he was still on a quest.
So it's more of like a process than a destination.
Definitely.
Well, tell me about how you got hooked up with Ray Brown.
I met Ray Brown through Gregory Hutchinson, who was one of my favorite drummers. I must say that Greg put me on every gig that he ended up leaving, which started from Roy Hargrove. Well, I'm sorry, let me take it back to Betty Carter. He introduced me to Betty Carter. So I moved to New York, and then when he left Roy Hargrove's band, he told me, learn the music, and I'll make sure you get on the gig. So I got Roy Hargrove's gig, and then when he left Ray Brown's trio, he did the same thing. So I flew out to Yoshi's. That was Greg's last week with Ray Brown, and I recorded every show, and I learned the whole book. So when Ray called me to do the gig, I knew all of the repertoire.
Did you feel confident?
No, because those were like huge shoes to fill. Greg plays so much drums. It was like, to come after that was pretty rough. But
I feel like there's always a sense of longing for something further, and then you have to have a baseline of confidence in order to function. So when you sit down to play now, I mean, how confident do you feel?
My attitude now is really trying to create something or play something that I've never played, like to not repeat myself musically. I think that's important because I'm into a lot of Miles Davis and a lot of Wayne Shorter's composition, and just hearing Wayne Shorter, he's one musician that never repeats himself, and I think that's important for all of us to be able to interpret the music in a way to not be repetitive.
Like, how do you do that?
Practice.
I mean, it's almost like a person saying, I don't want to say the same thing twice.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's what we in jazz improvisation is coming up with something, on the spot. And there's a way to practice when you're coming up with different things to not be a cliche or, speak the same thing on your instrument.
So when you're playing, how much are you thinking and how much are you kind of using your gut instinct?
I use more so of the gut instinct because it's all the interaction of what someone else does. You know, I feel like if I'm thinking too much, I'm taken away from the conversation. You know what I mean? So it's more of an interaction for me.
All right, well, let's get back to Ray Brown. What would be a story that you could tell us that kind of encapsulates your relationship with him? You were the last drummer to play in his group, right?
Yes. Man, it was just like a dream come true, you know, being in middle school and high school, listening to all of the Oscar Peterson trio records. So I knew the concept of how he, you know, incorporated the drums in a trio was like a big band. You know, he really wanted the sound to be huge. And that's what I learned from him, is how to set up, you know, the next chorus and setting the next section up 8 bars ahead and things like that, you know.
Would he kind of mentor you and talk to you about it, or was it mostly just kind of learned through experience?
That's one thing I learned from older musicians, that all the older musicians that I played with, they never really teach you and tell you this, that, and the other. It's more on the spot.
They don't want to have to talk to you.
Exactly. No, he's definitely one that he would just tell me, man, Art Blakey, or just say a name, you know. He'd be like, do you know such and such? Like, that's the kind of vibe, you know, I'm looking for on this.
Did you feel intimidated by him?
When I first joined the band, I did. But he was such a kind soul. He was almost like a homie, like a best friend, you know, even though he was like a senior, you know.
If I were to look up your biography, you know, I could see all of these great musicians that you played with, and I could kind of create my own narrative of how your life went, like from one great musician to another, ultimately releasing records as a leader as well. But tell me, what are some of the most challenging things that you've had to confront as an artist?
I feel like one thing that a lot of young musicians, or musicians in general, don't learn is the business of the music, and learning how, you know, one money management or taxes, or just how to save money, you know, or a lot of musicians didn't have health insurance and just different things like that.
When did you have health insurance for the first time?
For the first time, surprisingly, I got health insurance in 2007.
Okay.
That was a long time after I lived in
you moved to New York when you were 94.
Right.
So if you got sick, did you get sick during those 13 years?
Thank God.
So you got lucky.
Yes, I did.
When did you kind of figure out that you needed to pay closer attention to those things?
When I hooked up with Ray Brown, just being around him, he was the one that, you need a credit card. To be in my band, you need to have a credit card. You need to have a corporation. I won't pay you as an individual. I have to pay your business. And all of that stuff I learned from him.
Why do you think he stipulated that?
Because it made it easier for him to deal with his taxes. And
I would think, you know, it also came from a place of concern.
No, definitely. Yeah, a band leader doesn't want to have to go and check his whole band in the hotel. Hey, here's my credit card. Here, you know, you don't have that. So he wanted to make sure that we were all responsible to handle our own.
Did it come natural to you once he told you that?
Yeah, I think just being around him, I picked up a lot of different things from him. It became easy.
What I'm trying to figure out is what did you have to kind of confront about yourself through this journey of mastery that you had to really, like, that was really difficult, and you're like, okay, I need to make a change in myself, in the way that I'm interacting with the world?
Just sometimes you have to cut yourself off, just when you're on your quest to practice. You know, to practice, there's a certain amount of time that you need to have in your solitude, you know, and sometimes you have to disappear to do that, and I did a lot of that, you know.
When did you learn how to say no?
I'm still learning.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I feel like lots of drummers have a natural tendency to be supportive.
Yeah,
And it's kind of part of what the instrument is designed for.
definitely.
Does it make you feel uncomfortable to say no to a gig? Do you have a tendency to want to say yes to everything?
Yeah, some musicians are just that incredible that you know that you're going to have a learning experience when you play with them. But it might not be the best business move or, look for you, but it can be a learning experience. And I think that's a blessing. And so I just say yes to a lot of things that a lot of people would say no to.
Do you ever regret it?
No, I don't regret anything.
Really? Nothing.
Nothing. It's all a lesson. I feel like, the choices we make, even if they're bad, it's all a learning experience.
So could you give me an example of a bad choice that you made that was a learning experience?
Just being so caught up in the moment. Like when I joined Ray Brown's group, like the first recording we did, we played a week at the Blue Note. Mm-hmm. I wasn't concentrating on just being responsible. So I get all the way to the venue, Oscar Peterson there, Milt Jackson's there, everyone's there, and I left my cymbals at the hotel. So that type of thing, like sometimes you can be so caught in the moment of doing something that's so big, but you can forget something so small.
So then what happened? You had to go back?
I had to take a cab back. But fortunately, Oscar Peterson, it took him a while to come downstairs from the dressing room. So I made it all the way back to the World Trade Center Marriott and back to the Blue Note in time for the gig.
I've stayed at that hotel.
Yeah.
It's like every other Marriott.
Yes.
But I can remember going up to the upstairs at the Blue Note and hanging out with Elvin one time. I wonder, like, who have been the most impactful mentors in your life?
Other than my mother and my father, I would say a trumpeter named Marcus Belgrave.
Yes.
He's the person that gave me my first set of Gretsch drums and learned how to read music from him. And he had a book with Lawrence Williams, a drummer from Detroit. So they were very influential on my early development.
Well, you said other than your mother and your father, and we already talked about your father a little bit, who's a keyboardist.
Yeah.
Is your mother a musician?
She's not a musician, but a music lover. So a lot of the records that I grew up listening to were her records as well.
What was she listening to?
Ramsey Lewis, Earth, Wind and Fire, gospel stuff from Andre Crouch. So much music,
And what are some of the things that she's taught you that you use every day as an artist?
Just spread the positivity in the music. There's so much negative stuff that she doesn't connect to that is going on now, and she never wants me to be, connected to that. So just spreading love through the music is what she's about.
This episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by Collectivo Coffee. Handmade coffee since 1993. Check them out online at collectivo.com.
If there was something about yourself that you could change right now, what would it be?
Nothing. Yeah, I'm not with change, like changing anything. I feel like I am who I am because of, the things that I've been through. So it's all forward motion for me.
Have you always felt that way?
I have, yeah.
What do you hope for the future for yourself?
I just hope to get better and better and to inspire. I'm at an age now where I feel like there are younger musicians looking up to me. I want to be able to inspire them and let them know how great they can be, and they can create a sound and be one with their instrument.
When did you start making beats for hip-hop?
Middle school. I was messing around with Paul's beats, doing, I had a Casio keyboard. I was in talent shows and stuff like that, but I really got serious in high school. And then after I moved to New York in 1996, I bought my MPC 3000.
What's your approach? And how does it differ from just playing drums?
My approach now, at this moment, I'm really creating a lot of non-sample music. So I'm playing a lot of instruments. I'm buying a lot of odd organs and just, wild percussion things, and just trying to create a sound that is original.
So you're talking about tracking it live.
Tracking everything
and not
live.
sampling it.
Not sampling it. I mean, we can be inspired by samples, but I want to try to take it to another place where it is something original and something that is just an original sound, I think is important.
You and Dilla were close. How did he impact your life, and what did you learn from him?
Man, organization. He was a genius. Like, just being around him, like, I was not as organized as he was.
How did you meet?
I met Dilla through, initially it was at a club in Detroit called The Shelter.
Because he's from Detroit, too.
He's from Detroit, yeah, East Side. It was a place called The Shelter, and it was a party every Friday. And I met him there. And then when Common was working on his album One Day It All Makes Sense, he came to Detroit to get some beats from Dilla, and I tagged along with him to Dilla's basement. And that's when we met again and exchanged numbers and stayed in contact. And then he called me when he was working on Fantastic Volume 2 to play on the song To You For You. So that was our first collaboration.
And what did you learn from him? You said organization. What does that mean? Just
organization, man. Like, his records were all alphabetized. Everything was where it needed to be. You look in his fridge, everything was lined up perfectly.
So like OCD almost.
Yeah, but that's inspiring because you can hear it in the music. Like, everything was where it needed to be.
Did that change the way that you operated your life? Did you go home and like organize your refrigerator after that?
No, it was more like, he listened to music in that way as well. So it taught me to be able to put on different ears to hear, records. There's certain things that you wouldn't hear if you just not as organized,
Can you remember starting to hear things differently?
Definitely. As far as just syncopation things, like you can hear a rhythm. Two drummers can play the same thing, but to know how to change the nuance, and to be able to program that, I think is really heavy.
What are you working on right now?
Right now I'm working with this new group. I'm in August Green, and we're working on some remixes now. So I'm working with Robert Glasper, and it's easy to bounce ideas off of like-minded people. So it's just, I'll track drums and he'll track the piano, and then I'll go in and kind of reproduce everything.
Do you get the same kind of visceral feeling from making beats that you do when you're sitting down behind an instrument?
Definitely. Most definitely. I feel more connected to the drums and being able to use that voice for what I'm doing now with hip-hop. Because everything can be manipulated later if I need to on a machine, or EQ'd, or so many plugins and effects that you can use.
Are you organized in the way that you create? Like, do you have a certain amount of time every day where you sit down and try to make something happen?
Definitely. I wake up early from 9 until probably about 6 or 7 o'clock. I'm in my studio working every day.
Are there certain times when it's just not coming?
Not really. I mean, if it's not coming, I'm just listening and I'm receiving information. So there's never a time where I feel like I'm not productive. There's always, just trying to grow.
What do you mean when you say you're listening and receiving information?
Studying records, listening to things, or re-listening to records that I've heard forever, and finding different things in them. That's me, like, trying to find different syncopations. Like, I'll hear a thing that Elvin played when I was in high school, but it means something different to me now because of what I've learned.
What was the shift in mindset necessary to go from being a drummer in other people's bands to creating your own work and putting your name on it?
I just felt it was important. I had so much to say with the music that I was making when I met Peanut Butter Wolf through Dilla and Madlib. I just felt like it was the time for me to step out and be a leader with what I knew. I felt like I had something to offer.
Did it feel more vulnerable?
Definitely. I mean, the people that, like, being around Dilla and Madlib, and these guys are great at what they do. So I just feel like I do have something to offer and want to offer something to the art form. You know.
And then how did that change your life to finally put something out into the world all of your own?
Man, it's the best feeling. It was a blessing to be able to connect with all of the listeners that, you know, that love the music. There's so many people that I didn't know would connect to the music.
Earlier, you alluded to your spirituality and your belief that God is in the music. Could you kind of elaborate on that?
I just feel like there are certain melodies or certain harmonies or certain tones that can heal. You know, like when someone's ill, and you know, I know through the records that Dilla made, a lot of that stuff kept him alive for a length of time when he was very ill. So that just lets you know that there's so much positivity in that the God force in the music.
Do you practice any particular spiritual tradition?
No, I just pray and I stay close. I grew up Christian, and I'm still Christian, and that's pretty much my belief.
Do you pray every day?
I try to.
What did you pray about today?
Peace and unity. There's so much going on in the world right now. That's what we need.
Closing thoughts?
Spread love like rumors.
Hey, let's hear it for Karriem Riggins.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you for having me, man.
Well, I think that's a good place to open it up to the audience if anybody has any questions for Karriem.
My favorite Miles Davis album? Dang, one record?
I'm ESP.
Ooh. I would say Nefertiti.
Same group.
Yeah, you know, actually the era of Miles that I love is the era when Wayne Shorter joined the band, because Miles loved his compositions, and I feel like that molded the group sound with Tony Williams, Ron Carter, Herbie Hancock.
What's your favorite Wayne record?
Ooh, man. Speak No Evil.
Ooh. I'm going to be speaking with Wayne's drummer, Brian Blade, soon. What would you ask him? I'll relay the question to him.
Brian is one of my favorite musicians. You can ask him, how does he play something different every night? Like that band is one of my influences, you know, with Patitucci and Danilo, and those guys play amazing. So you can ask him that.
Who else has a question for Karriem? Anybody? Stone's Throw people?
Oh, definitely. August Green is consists of a rapper named Common, Robert Glasper, and myself, and we all met in New York back in the 90s, and we've known each other for years. I've worked with Common over the years, and we were working on Black America Again, Common's last album, and we had such a great vibe in the studio. We started to work on another record once that record came out. And that's when we started to approach the live instruments and incorporating no samples. And we developed a sound that was original. And it sounded like no other Common record. So we wanted to just form the super group. And that's how we did it.
Was the impetus for doing the live instruments that you wanted to create something that couldn't be replicated by someone else? Or?
Definitely.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, there's certain things that you can get from a record, but there's certain things that, you know, just a live musician can do that is just so undeniably, you know, fresh, you know, that there's no record that could, you know, no sample that could emulate that, or vice versa.
I've met Common a couple times, and he strikes me as the same type of person that you described Hank Jones as, like just very put together and organized.
Yes.
Would that be correct?
Yeah, he's like there are other rappers that write the way he does, but he doesn't write any of his lyrics down. So he writes in his head, he'll drive around, and he'll just kind of be nodding his head, and by the time we get to the studio, he'll have verses done.
Do you do that with the drums?
I mean, I have motifs that I can come up with, but not like a full-on, set of rhythms. I have like a motif or an idea of something that I want to do.
Can you sing anything that you could play?
Definitely.
I read an interview with Elvin like towards the end of his life, and he said he didn't really practice by sitting behind the drums anymore. He just practiced in his mind.
Wow. That's deep, man. That's deep.
Do you do that?
I do, because sometimes, being on an airplane or, certain places, you don't know what it's going to sound like, but you can definitely think it. Sometimes it doesn't work out, though, when you try to sit down and do it live.
You're like, oh, shit, right. My hands can't do that. Any other questions?
Who's an up-and-coming drummer that you think people should know about?
Up-and-coming? Oh, wow. Yeah, my son Idris Riggins. He's 12. He's a great drummer. He's a great beat maker as well. I wouldn't say that he's an up-and-coming drummer, but Marcus Gilmore is incredible to me. He's Roy Haynes' grandson, and I feel like he's doing incredible things, and we've been in contact, and we're going to work on some music together as well. I love Damian Reed, so many other drummers, so many guys in New York playing their butts off.
And if you could have played on an album in the past, what would it have been?
A favorite album? I think I would have played on my album. Alone Together. A lot of those samples, and I feel like I had a lot more to say, with the live. I had a lot more ideas to bring.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.